Starting Solid Foods workshop. Now, I know that there's a lot of people here, and I know that there's a lot of confusion that can sometimes arise with starting foods. So, I would love to know as we get started what the main questions that you have are around starting solid foods. We're going to talk about the who, what, where, when, why, and how of starting solid foods today. But if there's specific questions at any time during this discussion, please just drop them below in the comments. And if we don't answer them live here during this discussion today, then we'll definitely get back to them in the next couple of days over messages, over email, over whatever sort of platform that we can. I can just throw together some extra little videos and put them out there too on social media and whatnot. And if you have a question, you can always text me too. I have a 402-256-0768 is how you can text me. And so anytime if you have a question about parenting or anything along those lines, you can always just text me. It's 402-256-0768, and that will help me get to your questions more easily and get your questions answered. As we get started today, solid foods is a tricky subject for a lot of parents because there's so much information out there and so much misinformation out there that oftentimes parents have no idea what to do, and you get this analysis paralysis. And if you have felt that way, comment yes below, because I think a lot of parents feel like it's just so confusing to try and figure out, what do we start with? When do we start? Is it okay to introduce this? Is it okay to introduce that? What about heavy metals? We're going to talk about heavy metals in particular later on. What are the rules? Because when our parents were feeding us, it was very different. And when their parents were feeding them, it was very different. And now there's so much competing information, and there's so many different terms and techniques and methods and practices that it can just be overwhelming for a lot of parents. And what that leads to is a lot of stress and worry and guilt that you're not doing it right, or you're doing something wrong that's going to impact how your baby turns out. Or if you feed them the wrong food and they have a reaction, you don't know what to do, or you're worried that you're going to miss out on a window or an opportunity or something like that. And so my hope with all of this is just to tone down the worry, tone down the misinformation and the FOMO and the analysis paralysis, so that you can focus on enjoying feeding your baby, because it's supposed to be fun. Feeding your baby is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be something new and exciting. And when I talk to parents about it, I always tell them, and they're always so excited to get started. And if we can eliminate all the worry and the confusion and the fact that we're doing it in a certain way, and is this way right, or is this way going to cause trouble? Well, if we can eliminate those things, then it's going to make for a much more fun time to just sit down and let your baby get messy and have a good time and get to experience that with them. Dinner time, my mission is to help parents enjoy dinner time more. And so everything that we talk about, from newborn babies to 1-year-olds to 2-year-olds to 3-year-olds to 6-year-olds to 8-year-olds, when it comes to eating, you want to enjoy that. That's something that we really enjoy as a family, and I try and help other parents to enjoy that too. There's a lot of stress and guilt and worry and anxiety and frustration around mealtime, and I hope to help you with this to feel more comfortable and confident and have that clarity that you need, so that you can go through this without having to worry so much that you're doing something wrong. And so what we're going to do is talk through how to start solid foods. This is something that's really exciting for parents, and we're just going to kind of go through the different who, what, where, when, why, because that's how my brain works and how I can keep it kind of organized in my head, what I want to say. And the who is babies. I mean, young children, how to start solid foods. There's really nothing complicated about that. You're probably a parent or a grandparent that's watching this, and you're trying to figure this out, and you have a young child and you're talking about starting solid foods. So the who is pretty easy. Infants. The when is the real question, and a lot of parents wonder, when is the best time to start solid foods? I don't want to miss some critical window. I don't want to get behind. I see my friends on Instagram that are starting their baby ridiculously early, or they're waiting a long time on their Facebook groups, and it's just confusing. So when I talk to parents about this as a pediatrician in my office, I talk through starting solid foods. There is not a perfect day to start solid foods. There's not a perfect window where if you don't hit it on this certain day or week or month, then something bad is going to happen. And it can vary from family to family, and even from season to season. The stressful seasons might not be the best time to start a baby on foods. If you have a big project for work coming up, or there's a lot on your plate right now, or you're dealing with all the other issues and things that come along your way as a parent, just say, okay, we're going to wait a couple weeks because this is not an emergency. There's no specific start date that you must start at. And so we're going to take this when it's best for us to get started, rather than feel like we got all this stress and things on our plate, and now we're going to add on this new thing that we're kind of unsure about and we want to enjoy, but there's just so much on our mind right now. There's not a perfect day or a perfect time that you have to start. For most babies, I tell parents to start sometime between 4 and 7 months of life. Now, the WHO, the World Health Organization, recommends exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life, and I firmly support that. And I know a lot of parents want to wait until 6 months of life to start solid foods, and that is perfectly fine. So if you want to wait, just wait until 6 months of age to start. Now, some families are just really excited to get started and want to start early. And what we know is the amount of food that baby gets from starting solid foods before 6 months of life is very small and doesn't interfere. There's great studies that show that it doesn't interfere with continued success with breastfeeding and exclusively breastfeeding as long as you like. So the fact that you're giving them a little bit of peas or sweet potato or anything like that is not a big deal in my mind. And a lot of parents are just kind of chomping at the bit to try it and really see that their baby looks ready and want to get started. And so I think it is totally fine to start before 6 months of age if you would like. Some soft signs that your baby is probably getting ready to start solid foods. One is they've got some good truncal control. Now, I don't expect babies to be sitting independently, like you put them on the exam table, or you don't have an exam table at your house, but when you come into the doctor's office, you put them on the exam table and they can sit there and kind of keep themselves upright. I don't think that babies need to be that good at sitting independently to start solid foods. You want a baby that you can put them in a high chair, they can be sitting upright, and they don't do this. They don't do this too much. I mean, you could stick maybe a kitchen towel on the side or something, but you want them to be able to sit upright. Sitting upright is the most important thing because it makes them least likely to choke, and it also just kind of gets them in the sense of, okay, when we're sitting at the table, this is what we do. And so that's kind of a good soft sign that baby is at least, in the ballpark of ready to start solid foods. If baby is taking an interest in eating, you sit them on your lap or they're watching you guys eat and they're like, every bite, they're like, how can I get closer to that? Then that's a good sign too, that we're getting close to being ready to start solid foods. And then the third one that I often talk to parents about is just parents being ready for it. Maybe it's something that you're kind of worried about and you're not ready for it. Well, then don't start. Don't feel like you have to rush into it. Just because baby is sitting up, just because baby's taking an interest in food, if you as a parent are not in the mental headspace to start solid foods, then just wait a few weeks. Get the information that you need and then feel comfortable starting. There is no rush. And if it's a busy week or you got a project that's due or something big on the horizon, you're moving or, starting a new job or whatever's coming your way, just say, okay, we'll start after that time period, because like I said, there is no emergency to all of this. So baby's ready, parents ready, then we are ready. You don't have to feel like you have to rush into it. Now, there's lots of information out there about all these other signs to look for to decide if baby is ready for solid foods. Tongue thrusting, not a big deal. All babies thrust their tongues. That's one of the main ones that I get here and asked about, like they're still sticking their tongue out or something along those lines. That means they're not ready. I don't buy that. I don't see that the evidence supports that, nor does my clinical experience or the experience with our kids support that you have to wait until they stop doing that. Now, what you have to realize is you're going to have baby spit out a lot of the food that you start with. And so what you're going to do is you're going to put on a spoon, realize that most of it is going to come out and it's going to end up on their shirt or the floor or somewhere else. Most of it is not going to end up, being swallowed and digested and all those things. And that's okay. The purpose of starting solid foods at this age is not that they have all of this extra nutrition coming in from sweet potatoes or peas or pears or green beans or whatever it is. It's something new. It's something fun. It's new textures and flavors. And it's just a developmental milestone that babies reach, and then we're ready to start doing it. It doesn't mean that it's critical that they swallow every bite or anything like that. Now, so that kind of covers the when. It's sometime between 4 and 7 months when baby seems ready and parents are ready. Then it's the time to start. The other when is like what time of day. It doesn't matter. You can pick whatever works for you. And I just tell parents to focus on what's most convenient for them and that they can be consistent with. For most parents, it's dinner time because people have more time stretching into the evening. either with parents' meal, before parents' meal, or after parents' meal. Doesn't really matter. And so I wouldn't get hung up on the specifics of that. I would just recognize that if you're consistent about it and they kind of come to expect it, then that makes it easier. If some mornings it's breakfast, if some days it's dinner, not a big deal either. You can mix it up too and see what works for you, what works for your family. Maybe this week you're going into work late or something like that and you want to do breakfast, and then other days you're working late and you want to do, or you're getting off work early or something like that. It truly doesn't matter. I expect that most babies between 4 and 8 months of age will take about 1 sitting per day of food, and you can adjust that as you see. If baby seems really interested and wants to eat more, then put them in their chair more and let them eat more. It's not a big deal. You don't have to be very rigid about any of these rules, as you'll see as we talk through all these things. And at the same time, if you have to skip a day or skip a week because things are just too busy, that's fine too. Your baby will not suffer from not having sweet potatoes for a couple of days. They probably won't even miss it or realize it, especially in those early phases. If we're getting ready to travel or if we have a lot on our plate and just don't want to do it for a few days, not a big deal. Their nutrition will still come from the milk that they're getting. And so it's not a big deal if they decide, if you as the parents decide, okay, we just got to take a couple days off from this and then we'll get back to it. Usually between 8 and 10 months of age, parents will increase to 2 sittings per day of food. And usually around 12 months of age, baby will be sitting for 3 meals a day, like an adult, and then having some snacks and feedings in between then. I find that most babies will take as much either formula or breast milk feedings at least until about 8 months of age. And then you'll see that they start to take more solid foods in, and that may impact the amount that they take by mouth of breast milk or formula or feedings in general. Now, I think that's totally fine and it doesn't worry me at all. What you'll see is that baby will just kind of compensate and they'll get the calories that they need. And I'm a big fan of just watching baby for cues that tell us how often they want to eat and how hungry and thirsty they are. Babies are very good at explaining themselves, even without words, that they're hungry, that they're thirsty, and those sorts of things. So I really just find that parents worry about the number of ounces a lot more than they need to. And especially as you see that they're taking more by mouth of foods, then you'll see that they drop off in the amount of milk or formula, the breast milk or formula that they're taking around 8 to 10 months of age. And you have to remember that all those purees and foods that they're eating have liquid in them too. So you don't have to worry that they're going to become dehydrated because they're not taking in quite as much as they used to. And you have to remember too that those babies at 4 months of age or 6 months of age are taking like 20 to 30 ounces per day. That's a lot more liquid volume than any baby needs, which is why they pee so often, is because they take in a lot of liquid volume. So the fact that their volume amount is decreasing as they're getting older is not anything to worry about. If you or I were drinking as much based on body weight as babies do, you'd have to go to the bathroom all the time. I don't know how else to put that. Okay, so a lot being said there. Start at 4 months. Start between 4 and 7 months of age. Start with once per day, increase to twice per day when baby shows interest, usually around 8 to 10 months of age, and then 3 times per day closer to a year. Let baby set the mood. If you guys really enjoy solid food, there's nothing that says that you can't start 2 or 3 meals per day earlier. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just a parental and baby preference. Now, the next question that we're going to cover is the what. So what should we start with feeding baby? And this has been talked about and written about in so many different ways, and there's been so many different recommendations, and it's made it so much more challenging for families than I think it truly needs to be. And the what is very simple in my book: anything. The only restriction is I don't want you to feed baby honey until they're 1 year of age, because there's a risk of botulism, so no honey until they're 1 year of age, till they're 12 months old. And then obviously things that they are going to choke on, you're going to make into tiny bites for them so that they're not going to choke on them. You're not going to start with peanut M&Ms or something like that to feed your baby. But you're somebody that's watching this video, you're a very competent adult, and you wouldn't start with peanut M&Ms anyways. So the only restrictions are going to be no honey and no things that they could easily choke upon. So what do you actually start with? Because I just say that and it just seems like the baby food aisle gets longer and longer and you have no idea what to start with. So I think that there's three schools of thought on that. Is one is just baby food. Like you go to the grocery store or you get on Amazon and you get baby food and you get the purees and their fruits or vegetables or meats or those sorts of things, and it's fine to start with any of those. There's no specific order that you need to follow. There used to be these like tables of you have to do it in this way and you have to do yellow and then orange and then all these ridiculous rules, and there's no evidence that those make a difference. And if you think back, like 1,000 years ago, what would you do? Or 10,000 years ago, like what would the cave parents do if they had to feed their baby only yellow foods for the first 3 days? Well, they would be stuck in one area. They would run out of those foods. The saber-toothed tiger would realize, okay, parents of 4 or 5 month olds always show up at this squash patch because they know that their baby has to have yellow vegetables first. So I'm just going to hang out here and find all those parents. Like that just doesn't make any evolutionary sense that you would have to have yellow food first. And it's just so rigid and overbearing that I really try and help demystify that there's any rules that you have to feed them in a specific order. It doesn't matter if you start with yellow or orange or green or red or whatever you want. It also doesn't matter if you start with fruits or vegetables or mix it up. You can start in any order. These things do not contribute to babies that have a preference for fruits over vegetables. There's just no evidence or data that supports that, and it just makes it more rigid than it needs to be. And it makes it, oh wait, you can't feed baby that. We have to feed them this for 3 days straight. And oh wait, you can't feed that because if you feed them pears, they're going to have a preference for fruit for the rest of their life. No, that's just not the way that babies learn to eat, and that's just not the way from an evolutionary standpoint that makes any sense, and there's no data to support that. So at the end of the day, if you want to start with baby foods, baby purees are totally fine to start with. We'll talk about the heavy metal thing in a little bit here because I know that's a question that we get asked a lot in the comments. There's questions about that. You can start with any. You can mix it up as often as you like, meaning you could do pears today and sweet potatoes tomorrow and green beans the next day and peas the day after that and squash and zucchini and whatever you want. You do not have to wait days in between feeding. That used to be a thing too, looking for allergies. And it's very, again, nonsensical when it comes to feeding a human that was born before 1900 when they didn't have all of this great access to foods. And we just didn't have the luxury to only feed baby sweet potato for 3 days in a row. Well, we're a migratory nomad and we have to keep moving and we need food and water sources and everything like that. Like, that just doesn't make any sense from a evolutionary standpoint, nor does the data support that. So start with whatever you like, switch it up as often as you like. You don't have to wait days in between feeding foods. And if that's helpful, comment yes below, because I know there's a lot of parents out there that are hearing these things or being told these things from well-intentioned relatives or well-intentioned Facebook articles or things like that, and it just adds to the confusion and rigidity, and it really takes the fun out of starting solid foods. And so it's my hope that by talking through these things, we can demystify that. And I have, I've been in practice for 8 something years and have walked through this with so many parents that I feel very comfortable in sharing that information with you as to you can start with anything, you can work through anything. There's no specific first food that you have to start with. A lot of parents ask about rice cereal too, and we're getting questions about that below. You do not have to start with rice cereal. You don't have to take breast milk or formula and mix it with rice cereal to start with. And in fact, if you're thinking about the heavy metal thing that we're going to talk about in a little bit, rice cereal is perfectly fine to avoid. Rice actually takes in more arsenic than other foods from the soil. And so if you want to avoid rice and rice-containing products, I'm totally fine with that. I used to tell parents that. There's all this new evidence that it doesn't make a difference. You don't need to do it. Rice cereal, frankly, tastes really boring. If you could do rice cereal or peas or rice cereal or sweet potatoes or pears or anything like that, babies are going to want those fun textures and flavors, not just like gritty, glumpy feeling, tasting, terrible smelling breast milk or formula mixed with rice cereal. Just skip that altogether. Okay, we talked about the who, we talked about the when, we talked about the what. The first what would be just like baby foods. The other thing you can do is make your own baby food purees. You can take any of the foods that you eat on a regular basis and puree them up. You can cook them, just cook carrots, pears, whatever you want. Cook it so it's soft. Apply heat in whatever way you like to make it soft, and then mash it up, either mix in water or breast milk or formula to thin it out, and then you got yourself a puree. You can do that with any of the foods that you eat on a typical basis. Start with that and enjoy. There are parents that like, making their own baby purees, and there's certainly little gadgets out there that help you to like mix it up. But if you have like a mixer bullet thing or anything like that, all of those things work fine to take soft fruits and vegetables, even meats, and mix them up, and then you got yourself a baby puree. So that's totally fine. The third thought is the baby-led weaning, or starting with like little bites of food. And I totally think that is fine too. There's actually, I'll link it below or send you a follow-up email. I talked with some baby-led weaning experts on my podcast and talked through the baby-led weaning and how to start that and all those sorts of things. And I'm totally in support of that. I think it is totally fine. The basic tenet of that is instead of doing purees, you just do little bites of food. And it allows baby to experience new textures and flavors and all those different things. It's totally fine to do that. You don't have to be rigid about that either. There's certainly some that are very, laissez-faire, and then there's some that are very rigid and you have to do this on this day and this day. And as you have probably gathered, I'm more of a laissez-faire sort of person. If you have fruits and vegetables and meats and things like that you are eating and you want to make little bites of them and give them to baby, that's perfectly fine. A lot of parents, as far as like baby-led weaning, like to start with banana. They like to start with avocado, stuff that's easy to, just kind of chomp up and for baby to eat. But you can work your way through all of those things too, and that's perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable way to start solid foods. And it's fun too to see baby like figuring out how to eat an avocado, or seeing their face as they try banana for the first time. All of those are really fun ways to do it too, and perfectly fine and acceptable way to feed baby. Okay, so we covered the who, we covered the when, we covered the what. Now we're going to talk about the where, which is an easy one. For the most part, babies, you put babies in high chairs to eat. You can also hold them in your lap. The most important thing is that they're just upright so that the likelihood of choking is decreased. Now, it's good to do like infant CPR, infant Heimlich course, but there's plenty of YouTube videos out there that can give you a starting point. I do think that infant CPR is really good to do so that you know how to do that and you know how to do back blows and everything like that if baby is choking, but you don't have to wait until you know how to do that to start eating solid foods. You will find that your baby will gag on a lot of foods and spit out a lot of foods and cough on a lot of foods that they try, especially when they're trying new textures, new thickness, and all those sorts of things. Totally normal, nothing to worry about. So try all of those things and realize that your baby will do that. And what you can do is just watch baby. Baby will take care of this on their own. You don't have to do a lot of finger swiping or trying to get the food out of their mouth. Just let them work on it. If you can hear them, if they're making noise when they're coughing, then just let them keep coughing and gagging and get that up, and don't get deer in the headlight look. Don't make a big scene about it, because then baby will get upset too. It looks like you're, gagging on that a little bit. And then you can just keep going and keep trying new foods and everything like that. You don't have to worry. Choking is a rare thing. Choking is when they're not making any noise at all, and their airway is getting obstructed by the food. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get baby out of the high chair and you're going to do back blows to loosen that food up so that then you can get it out of their mouth and get their airway open back up. But the gagging and the coughing and the sputtering on foods is totally normal, and it's not choking or anything like that. Hopefully that helps and makes sense. Now, if you have a question that we haven't talked through yet, drop it in the comments below. Like I said, we'll look through the comment questions. We're going to keep going and keep talking about a couple of other things, and then we will talk about heavy metals in foods, which is a big question and concern that I'm hearing from a lot of parents. Okay, so we've talked about the who, we've talked about the when, we've talked about the what, we've talked about the where, and the how we went through too when we went through the what of starting purees versus making your own baby food purees versus baby-led weaning. All of those are fine approaches. I would just say, sit down with your spouse, your partner, whoever else is involved in the care of your baby, and say, hey, I think we're ready to start solid foods. Let's try this and this and this. Why don't you pick them up at the grocery store and we can try those next week, and not make a big thing out of it, but make it something exciting. I mean, you're going to take pictures, obviously. You're going to get pictures for Instagram and for relatives and everything like that. You want to capture those first moments when baby is trying something other than milk for the first time, because it's like a whole new sensation for baby, and it's fun to see how they react to it. And then it's the next night you want to try something else and see if they like that better. What I wouldn't do is say, oh, they always spit out their green beans, they must hate green beans, because then you get into the habit of saying that and telling relatives and friends and babysitters, oh, they never eat their green beans. And then eventually they grow up and they hear that enough that they hate green beans. And instead what I would do is just keep offering them. And that's a theme throughout everything that I teach parents about starting solid foods, expanding options, when you're getting to the point of, trying new foods and putting your toddler, you're offering them food and they're throwing it on the floor saying no, the best thing to do is just keep offering and not to label them as a green bean hater or only likes fruits or those sorts of things, because then they just live up to those expectations that you've set for them. Whereas if instead you just say, oh, well, you must not be hungry for that right now, you must not like that at this moment, then that's perfectly fine and a good way to phrase it, rather than getting in the habit of saying that they hate any certain food. Okay, we're going to shift gears and talk about heavy metals in baby foods, because that is something that has recently come to attention, and I've been getting a lot of questions and concerns about that, and I just wanted to set the record straight and give people peace of mind. You have probably seen in the news in the last year or so that there's been a lot of discussion about heavy metals and toxic metals in baby foods, and it's caused a lot of concern and questions amongst parents. There's been lots of reporting on it and what do we do, and I've gotten lots of questions in my inboxes of what do I do with all this baby food I have? Do I need to throw it away? Do I need to make my own baby food? What's the right answer? And so I just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of clear up that concern. First and foremost, my advice to you would be don't panic, because we know that there are heavy metals in foods that we eat on a regular basis, and that is entirely normal. And for the entirety of human history, there's been heavy metals in foods. This is nothing new. This is no new information. But it certainly raises concern amongst parents when you see these reports and these things on the news about it. And am I doing something that's going to harm my baby? Remember, first and foremost, that all foods that come from soil have heavy metals, and a lot of foods that come from the ocean, for example, or foods that basically we eat that also eat plants, have heavy metals in them. If you think about salmon or tuna having mercury, or all of the different things like rice and arsenic, all of those foods that we eat come from the earth, or they eat things that come from the earth, and the earth is full of metals. And so I don't mean to sound like a kindergarten teacher as I just said that, so I apologize. But what we know is that the soil from the earth contains heavy metals. When carrots and sweet potatoes and all the foods that come from the ground, I'm showing my limitation of agricultural knowledge, that grow in the ground, heavy metals from the ground come up and as part of the soil get incorporated into that food. And so what we know is that it's okay that foods have metals in them. Our bodies from all of human history have been used to seeing metals in foods. From the ancient days till now, people are exposed to heavy metals in foods, and that is normal. Now, do we need heavy metals in our foods? Not really. We don't use heavy metals in our body for a lot of different processes. Now, there's some that we do, like copper and zinc and things like that, but we don't need things like mercury or cadmium or arsenic or anything like that for the normal bodily processes. But having said that, that doesn't mean that they're inherently bad for us at the right concentrations. And so what I try and teach parents is, with everything, moderation is important, and the dose is what makes the poison. You can overdose on carrots and have orange skin. You can overdose on tuna and have mercury toxicity issues. So what we're going to do, instead of focusing in on this baby food is reported to have toxic metals in it, I can't give it to my baby, is we're going to look and say, okay, these reports that came out about the toxic metals in food are still below the acceptable levels for heavy metals in foods. And so what we know is that it's a reporting issue, but at the same time, the food that we get from the store, the food that we get, the fresh fruits and vegetables that we get also have those things in them. And that's something that they watch for on a regular basis and make sure that we're not growing things in soil that has too high of levels of heavy metals, but realizing that there is an acceptable amount of heavy metals in food, because at the end of the day, we all know that there's a risk and a benefit for everything that we eat. And so the risk of heavy metal poisoning from carrots or from sweet potatoes or from green beans or pears or whatnot is outweighed by the benefit of eating those foods, because of the nutrients derived from them, from the calories derived from them, from eating all the benefits that come from eating fresh, locally grown foods. We know that there is a trade-off there. And so, like everything in life, there's a risk and a reward. In this case, the reward of eating those foods, of being exposed to a lot of different vegetables and fruits and meats and cheeses and all those different things, is important. And so what we know is that babies can tolerate that adult humans can tolerate that, and what we're going to do instead of focusing on and worrying about the reports about that there's levels of heavy metals in baby foods is look and say, okay, we know that the FDA and the USDA monitor those, and the reports show that they were elevated but not at a level that is considered dangerous. We also have a lot of research and experience of all of humans eating these foods to know that there's a safe level in the food, and that safe level is outweighed, the risk of that is outweighed by the fact that we want our children to be exposed to a lot of different nutrients from different fruits and vegetables. And so we just kind of have to deal with that risk-benefit ratio all the time, realizing that we're not going to do anything that puts our child in harm's way by feeding the baby foods that are off the shelf. And parents often ask me, well, should I just grow my own food and make my own purees or things like that? Well, if you go to the grocery store and you get some carrots and you take them home and you cook them and puree them and give them to baby, well, those have toxic metals in them as well, because those were grown in soil as well. Do organic foods have less heavy metals? No, they have heavy metals in them too, because organic foods are grown in soil too, and so they have heavy metals in them too. So at the end of the day, it's frustrating information to have, because it's like, well, I'm giving my baby this, but again, it's just a risk reward thing that we're gonna have to deal with. In everything that we do, there's a risk to letting your child ride a bike, but there's also the benefit of exercise and fun and developmental things that come along with those new opportunities. And so we're going to just be balancing risk and rewards for our whole parenthood and raising of our children, and all the decisions that we make for our child, for our family, for ourselves. Like driving to work is a risk too, but it's outweighed by the benefit of taking care of patients and having a paycheck and those sorts of things. So this is just another example of that, and I try and just help parents to not over worry or over emphasize the heavy metals in foods, because I know it's something that's been on everybody's minds and plates, and trying to figure out, well, what do I do? Can I still feed my baby these foods? And the answer is yes. You can still feed your baby purees. You can still do making your own baby foods. You can still do baby-led weaning, because what we know is that the levels are low, that our bodies are adapted to handle that, and what we want to do is provide a variety. The most important thing that you can do to make sure that you're keeping your baby safe and healthy from toxic metals and things like that is a variety of foods. You don't have to stick with one food for a certain number of days. You can vary it, and variety is the way that we help protect ourselves from any, food that might have more heavy metal than another. We can do fruits and vegetables. We can do meats and cheeses. We can do all of those different things that allow us to have variety in our food. And what that does is it protects us. It diversifies the amount of food that we're getting from any certain source, so that our body can handle the metals without any long-term damage. If we feed our baby the same food every day, every week, every month, every year, then the risk increases that amount of heavy metals will increase. So just doing a variety of foods. Now, I think that for most parents, and when I talk with parents, they've been told in the past, you have to do a certain number of foods for 3 days in a row, because that's what they used to say. And I have done this starting solid foods workshop to try and dispel that among all the other myths that are out there about starting solid foods. And this is another example of that. Like, you can do 3 days worth of carrots, and you're not going to put your baby at risk for any heavy metal poisoning from carrots, but you can also throw some variety in there. And I think parents will enjoy it more, and kids will enjoy it more if you throw some variety in there. We do carrots one day, we do bananas the next day, we do avocados the next day, maybe we go finish off some carrots the day after that. That is the spice of life. Variety is the spice of life. And so that's what I try and recommend to families, to not have to worry that they're overexposing to any given metal or any given food. It's just create variety and create diversity in the food that you eat and where it comes from, and that is as protective as anything. You can eat the foods. You can give your baby fish. You can give your baby fruits, vegetables, meats, cheeses, all of those things. Provide a variety, and you'll be doing everything that you need to keep your baby safe from heavy metals. So hopefully that has helped to dispel some of the concern that's out there. Now, if there's one thing that you want to do in addition to providing a variety, it would be to skip rice. Rice cereal has been this staple for a long time. in the days when there was more concern for iron-rich foods and getting those things to babies. But what we know is that rice, as it's grown and develops, pulls in more arsenic. It's not that there's, people putting arsenic into rice cereal to poison babies or anything like that. It's that there's arsenic in the soil, and rice grows in water, and so it soaks up more. I'm totally showing my lack of knowledge about rice because I could be totally wrong about how it grows. But I know that as rice grows, it takes in more arsenic than the average fruit or vegetable. And it's not at toxic levels or anything like that, but it's one thing that if you want to skip something, if you want to provide variety and skip rice, that will be doing literally everything that you need to do to feel comfortable with introducing these foods and not worrying about the toxic metals. So skip rice cereal, skip rice containing baby foods, and just feed them real, normal human foods, and you will be doing everything that you need to do. Hopefully that helps. If that has helped, comment below, because I would love to hear that has given you some peace of mind. Or if you have lingering questions, comment below as well, and we can tackle those. Now, one last thing before we go. I know there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of parents that are really having trouble coming to grips with starting solid foods and everything that goes along with that, because there's so much information and there's so many voices, not just all the online voices and differing opinions and shame and guilt that goes along with it, but what your mother says, what your mother-in-law says, what the lady at the grocery store behind you in the checkout line says, what well-meaning neighbors and onlookers say about how to parent your child, how to feed your child, all of those things. I know it can be really challenging to know what is best for your child, and you're worried about doing it wrong. You're worried about, missing some window or introducing foods in an order that predisposes your baby to getting allergies or to being a picky eater or something along those lines. I know that there's just a lot of confusion out there. And I know that there's a lot of parents out there that are craving a reliable source to get the information that they need in order to enjoy mealtime more and to feed your baby without the worry and guilt and FOMO and everything that goes along with modern parenting. And so what I've done is I've taken everything that I know and my experience with patients in the exam room, my experience as a father and, food feeder. I'm the main cook at our house most of the time. And so our experience with feeding our children and creating children that eat a variety of foods. Now, they don't all eat them perfectly, but if you have that expectation, then you're going to be sorely disappointed that your child eats perfectly at every meal. It's just not the case. But what I've done is I've created a tool and a resource for parents that want to cut out the confusion, cut out the overwhelm, and want to just enjoy starting foods and expanding options and having less drama at mealtime. And what it's called is Unpicky Eaters. It's an online course that allows you to get the information that you need to start solid foods, to expand options into finger foods and everything like that, and to enjoy the process when your toddler sits down at the table or your 2 or 3-year-old sits down at the table, so you can enjoy mealtime more without the worry, without the drama, without everything that goes into mealtime. Mealtime at our house, especially dinner time, is really a special time for us as a family, and I want you to get to enjoy that with your family as well, which is why I've created Unpicky Eaters. It's evidence-based, it's straightforward, and it grows with your little one so that you are getting the information that you need as your child grows and develops, going from starting solid foods to trying finger foods and what that looks like and all the different varieties and baby-led weaning and all the different things that you can do, to what to do when your toddler starts throwing their food and how, as a parent, to respond to that in a way that builds them up and makes dinner time more enjoyable rather than a stressful, frustrating time at the end of the day when you just want to connect as a family, but you feel like you're so focused on keeping your child at the table or making them eat or all these different things. Instead, we walk through exactly what it can look like for you and for your family. And so Unpicky Eaters is something that I've put together. It helps parents to focus on what makes for a fun dinner time, what makes for a time to connect and enjoy, and it gives you the peace and confidence and clarity that you need to really enjoy this period of time with your child. So much of our lives is wrapped up around meals and shared meals, and so much of that can be stressful for parents if they feel like they don't know what to do or they're doing things wrong, or dinner time has become the stress that they're not enjoying because they're not sure how to feed their baby. They're not sure what to do when their toddler starts storing their foods. All those things take away from that. And so Unpicky Eaters is my solution for you to get all of the information that you need to really enjoy parenting more. So if you would like to join us in Unpicky Eaters, it's been so fun to see all the parents going through this and really getting to have a reset, to enjoy eating more, and to enjoy that time as a family to connect. Then there's a link below where you can click to join Unpicky Eaters. And if you do so today, I have a special access to another workshop that I do that's called Drama-Free Dinners. And if you join today, you'll get access to that. So even if you're at the stage right now where there isn't a lot of drama around mealtime because you're just getting started, this will give you a leg up on what it's going to look like in 6 to 12 months from now and how you can have drama-free dinners for your toddler and your 2-year-old and 3-year-old and 4-year-old and beyond, so that you can enjoy mealtime more. So that's my offer to you, is if you enjoy the content that we've talked through today with starting solid foods, if you want to join Unpicky Eaters so you get all that confidence and clarity that comes from knowing how to start solid foods, how to transition to expanded options, and how to have drama-free dinners, then join today and you'll get free access to that workshop that I put on for parents that want to take the drama out of mealtime. And you'll have a leg up. You won't have to deal with figuring it all out when your 15-month-old starts storing their food on the ground. I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has given you peace of mind and clarity, whether or not you join Unpicky Eaters and join me and get that great information. I hope this has been helpful to you and has given you some peace of mind and some clarity about starting solid foods. At the end of the day, I want you to enjoy this. My goal is just to help parents enjoy mealtime more, and that's exactly what I do with all of these trainings that I do, whether it's this free workshop like this, if it's a paid workshop, or if it's a course like Unpicky Eaters. I'm here for you, and I would love it if you have any other questions or concerns that we haven't covered. You can text me. It's 402-256-0768, or reach out across any other social media channels, because this is what I enjoy most, is getting to share this information with families to make family time